Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022, and this is episode number 480 of a show where we find and fulfill our purpose in life, where you join me with my family on our small farm and homestead, where we talk about the 5 W's and how as we grow all around here at York Meadow Farm. And this is a show where we talk about a variety of topics, generally focused on what I call all around growth. And to make this happen, we set goals in 7 different areas of life: financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And we talked about some ways to achieve your financial goals more effectively in yesterday's show on financial coaching. And in today's show, we are going to discuss physical goals. Specifically, we're going to talk about goals with regard to distance running. And I'm kind of excited because we've got an interview lined up with my brother, where we are going to talk about exactly that. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Matt. I'm excited to have you on for this interview.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm used to talking on video calls pretty much all day long, but an interview with my brother's kind of new, so that's fun. It's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of new for me too. For people that are out there doing the normal thing, listening to this in podcast form, they'll likely have noticed some hesitation in my voice and some adjustments being made on the fly as the show continues to grow and change. And yeah, it's different for you being on video calls with me in a context like this. It's new for me doing the podcast and doing interviews in a context like this and being on calls in this manner. So, yeah, it's new all around, and we're going to talk about goals and distance running and ultimately the upcoming Cleveland Marathon. But I guess before we get into any of that, based on the history of the podcast, a lot of people already know about you and our sister Kate, but maybe to provide a little bit of context about the conversation we're going to have, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are?
Sure. So I'm Matt Kaiser, obviously. I don't know, a couple things about me and kind of who I am. I don't know. I figured a question like this might arise, and I was trying to kind of think how I would answer it. I don't know. Who am I? I guess sort of first and foremost, I'm like a father, right? I've got 2 little girls, Emily and Megan, who are 4 and 2. I'm a husband. I have a beautiful wife, Laurel. I'm a brother to Rob and our sister Kate. A son to our folks. I'm an employee of a company here in Cleveland. I'm an employer. I've got some people that report to me. But that stuff doesn't matter. The first few things did, the family stuff, but forget work. And then I don't know. I love to travel. I love to ski, tinker, build stuff. I really love just ripping into things and figuring out how things work and how to make them better. And yeah, overall just building and learning and growing constantly. Just there's a never ending sort of thirst for that.
Yeah,
that's kind of me.
That's how people understand a bit of you in the show, is the planner, the tinker, the builder. And when you said tinker, that made me think of the funny story that Mom always shares about, I don't know if she always shares it, at least it's one that sticks out in my mind, about you taking apart that one rotary phone in the basement just to what was up with that? Why'd you take apart the phone?
I don't know. I can't explain it. I just I have a weird desire to just figure out I turn this thing and it connects me to somebody else. cool. Like, how does that work? Right. I don't know. I've always had that curiosity, I guess, of just knowing how things work and trying to figure it out. Not in any sort of like depth, right? Not like just learn how to split the atom or anything, but I'm curious to like figure out how things kind of work and have some general knowledge of that. And it's just, dude, it's a never ending, like lifelong thing, you know. Ride the subway in New York City and go, huh, wonder how they coordinate all these trains and like figure out how it's always on time. And that syncs up to my Google Maps. Like, it interests me. I don't know. Like, there's just so much stuff in the world to be curious about. I guess I'm just curious. Always have been since
There,
like day one.
yeah, there is, and as far as the tinkering and curiosity goes, that's actually we'll actually touch on that towards the end of the show. And I don't know if I alluded to that earlier when we
Yeah.
spoke, but you know, so yeah, we'll kind of get back to the tinkering and the building and development of all the things later. But um, with regard to distance running, what's your background with athletics and in general, and like running?
Yeah.
How did that get into the mix in your life?
Yeah. So, athletics in general, man. Yeah. I guess I've always sort of been athletic in one way or another, not maybe in your traditional sense, but like we've got a 4-year-old or a 2-year old here who's climbs, no fear, climbs everything, jumping off everything. She's just a wild child. Apparently, I was the exact same way from what mom and dad have said. So, yeah, I've always kind of, again, since day one, like I guess I'm sort of wired that way. And so, yeah, I've always been athletic in one way or another. Kind of growing up, I guess my first, I don't know, venture into athletics was like organized sports, the typical stuff like t-ball, baseball, football, basketball, track. Um, and oh yeah, and also loved like being in the water. Swimming was something I always loved, and I guess I was pretty good at it. I was
Hmm,
at a certain point. I don't know if you remember this, but like
no.
I got to a certain level of you take swim lessons. Remember at the pool, and I was like 2 years I think ahead of where I was like supposed to be for my age, and yeah, they're like your next thing is like like lifeguard or junior lifeguard or something, and but you have to be, I don't know, 16 and I was 14. I don't know, whatever it was. Um, Point is, I was always very kind of active and in one way or another. And then in middle and high school, I played football through middle school, but then once high school came, I kind of stopped those more organized sports, your kind of typical sports, and started getting into things like mountain biking, rock climbing, sort of these alternative sports, I guess they called them back then. But the only sort of organized sport or team sport that I kept up with was track. I was always but not distance track, right? I was always a sprinter, a jumper. Like I was a high jumper. In fact, I think I lettered like I don't know, 3 or 4, almost all years of high school, and then I think freshman year I was like a high jump, like went to the conference championship, and I think I placed there. So, I was kind of athletic in that sense too. But the biggest thing that stuck with me forever is skiing. I've always been a skier. Had a friend when I was, I think, 7, came from a big family, and I was always over there. And the father offered to called mom up and was like, "Yeah, I'd like to take Matt skiing with us." And mom said, "Sure, get him out of here." So they had a bunch of gear because they had like 5 kids, I think. And yeah, he spent all day with me, taught me how to ski, and that was it. I'd been skiing ever since. And because nobody in our family skied, right? Like Kate didn't, mom and dad didn't, they weren't taking us. So I learned from this guy and then joined ski club. And then, you know,
When was this? Early high school, late grade
no,
school?
no, dude, I was 7. It was like second grade. I remember this family took me out, and I think I went then. I think I went the next year, and then I maybe I didn't go for a few years until ski club started in like 5th grade or something. I think 5th grade it started. And yeah, and it came so naturally to me. Yeah, so skiing has been a big thing. I've had the privilege of being able to ski kind of all over the place. And man, I've it's a lot of like a lot of stuff has sort of came together in my life where my best friend is a big skier, big traveler rather. That's what I meant to say. And he's sort of the group wrangler. He's the one that's always like trying to get people together and not trying to, he does. He just has this way of like connecting, getting people together and going out and doing stuff. So yeah, he's organized trips that I've been lucky enough for him to invite me on to like to all these crazy places. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, so that's sort of my background in athletics. Not a single mention of distance running in there.
Right.
But yeah, that was it. So I guess I've always sort of been athletic, but never a distance runner.
No, and this is all it's all relevant because um everybody's got their story, and this is yours. So with all of the athletics, yes, all right, there was some track in there, but like you said, no real distance events in track, some sprinting and some high jumping, actual, placing.
Yeah.
And like how so what at some point, getting out of organized sports and transitioning into some of the like the alternative sports, like you said, did at what point did like distance running enter into that? And when did you decide to do your first run, whether it was fun run, 5K or whatever?
Yeah. So like all of that stuff I mentioned gets kind of from the timeline of my life gets me into like, I don't know, early to mid 20s maybe. And then in the 20s, I really didn't do much of anything athletically, except skiing. Like that's always been there. I've never stopped skiing. I don't think there's been a year since I could drive where I missed going skiing. I always do it. That's just, I absolutely love it. Um, so yeah, I never ran distance back in school. But like I said, was a sprinter for sure. And it wasn't until I was into my 30s that I'm 42 now, and it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I started distance running. Yeah, so that's how long it's been. So I think 2012 was my first race, and it was was it my first like race? So in sort of prep for this, I was looking back and looking at what races I could come up with. I found this website, Athlinks, I think it's called, where you can go in, and I did this a long time ago when I was running a lot, and it like scours the interwebs, and like says, here's some people with your name or whatever. Is this you? You kind of compile it together, and there's your list. So I sort of did that, and
Athlinks.
I think it's I can tell you. No, I can't. I had the link, but I lied.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes because I'd like to do that. Even though, anyways, go ahead. That's pretty cool.
Athlinks.
Right on. Very cool. I didn't know a thing like that existed.
Shoot, that's not it. But it's something like Athlinks. ATHLINKS. Athlinks.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Social networking website aimed at competitive endurance athletes. There you go. Competitive. That's funny. So yeah, the first race that I did that was on there was a turkey trot. So it was a 5-miler back in 2012. And yeah, so that was it. It's only 10 years ago. Almost exactly 10 years, like 10 years and 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago.
Okay. I am actually putting this comment up. No, I'm not. Moving on. Okay, so almost 10 almost 10 years ago, you decide to you decide to do this after poking around in Athlinks. But why? Like, why? What was the motivator for that at that time? Why did you decide to,
Yeah. why in your 30s, 32
Yeah,
to be
like
exact, like jump into
what's like
this? Yeah, so I was, oh boy, I don't know. I let's go kind of rewind about 10 years before that. I was, graduated college, went to school here locally in Cleveland, and graduated and kind of was looking I didn't really want to leave the area. I liked it here. And, got a job. It took a couple of years really to find like my first real job or whatever. And, that was going all right. And then all of a sudden it was 2008, economy takes a nosedive, and I found that my role was kind of being modified or not eliminated, but it was being like reduced. And basically everybody that was in my particular role had to interview for these like regional jobs, whatever. Long story short, I ended up moving down to Miami, and that was 2009. And it was there for a couple of years, and then wanted to get back closer to home because I just didn't like South Florida. Just kind of decent to visit, but man, it was just different. It ain't the Midwest, and there's just like I don't know. It wasn't for me. So got out of there and figured, there's a job, basically the same job up in DC. So went to DC and was there for a little while and said, this isn't it either. DC's full of people that are, I don't know, man, just weird. Not for me.
DC people.
Yeah, like it was strange. Both of those places, it was like everyone just wanting to like impress others by their whatever, either what they drove or the clothes they wore or their resume or their jobs. Like I don't care about that. I just want to like
just a lack of
have friends and like get to know you, but that like didn't exist there. So I was like, forget this. I mean, I gotta get back home. Gave it two shots in two cities and wasn't well, anyway, man, point is I moved back home and I'd been away for like I don't know 4 years or so, maybe longer. And I moved back in with mom and dad for a second. And while I was kind of getting my back acclimated to Cleveland, and a buddy of mine lived in the city that we grew up in, and he's like, hey, you can come move into my basement. I said, sure, that's great. And this was a point in my career where I was like, I needed out of my job, my company. It was just time to move on. And I was looking around for other things and just wasn't feeling too like good about myself, or I don't know. I was kind of in a slump, right? Like kind of gave it my all for this company and moving around the country. And it wasn't what I really wanted. And I was back home and I was living in a friend's basement and I didn't really like that. And, just things weren't going my way. It felt like, so I decided to I wanted to make some changes. Right. So as a result, I was like trying to be healthier. And so I figured that was one thing. And then the second was, I'm now at this point, I'm getting into my 30s and I wanted to be social without like going out to bars all the time. Right. I did that a lot in my 20s. And anyway, this friend of mine, Jeff, was running a lot. And there were some other friends that were into running too. And I was like, let me give this thing a shot. So started like, I remember exactly where we lived and running around the block. And like, I did that once. I was like, holy crap. This isn't for me. The block. It was like, it was a pretty big thing. It was I think it was probably, I don't know. It's probably about a mile, but just jumping into doing a mile, like that seems like it seems like a lot. Maybe it doesn't sound like it though. Maybe some people could just, maybe some. I have friends that can just get up and like knock out 5 miles.
Yeah, having not run, it like maybe doesn't sound like, oh, I can do a mile. That's no big deal.
Yeah,
but to just go run a mile, you're exactly right. It's
especially if you haven't done it like your entire life. You're not like built that way. I'm a sprinter. Like I'm a jumper. Those are like different kinds of muscles than distance running. But anyway, so I wanted to be healthier and I had some people that were around me that were doing it. And I was like, sure. I did a mile. And then I think I did a 5K at some point. I don't know which one it was, but I know there was a 5K in there before the turkey trot. But yeah, that's it. That was the reason. I was just wanting to like do something different. Felt like I was in a rut and wanted to, I was back home, but I also felt like I wasn't at home either because like things have changed, and what was once like normal, and I was so excited to move back to be a part of it again, like had changed, and like I don't know, it's different. You feel like a stranger again, but it's I'm a stranger like in my own town. It felt weird, and I was just trying to do anything to like get more connected with people. So yeah, anyway, man, that's the long story of why. It was just wanting to get healthier and do something different.
Right. So, it like 10 years ago or so, let's just say 10 years ish,
Yeah.
you do your first distance run and you end up getting into running for a number of reasons. You're feeling down in life, you feel like you want to make some changes, get healthier, be social without going to bars, all of those things, just reasonable things that many of us think about and do when either when we're in our 30s or oftentimes at any point in life when we want to make some kind of change. So how many races would you say you've run or events you've participated in since that time over the past 10 years?
Yeah. I thought of one thing else too, before I answer that question, was it was a challenge, right? Like this was hard. Running is not easy for me. Distance running. Again, like I said, I have a good friend that can just go out and, knock without training, nothing. In fact, there's a race that takes place around St. Patrick's Day, and a bar opens up really early, and the guys like can go down and like drink a couple Guinnesses and then knock out 5 miles at like a 7-minute pace. No training. Not, it's just people are different, right? So
People are different,
and it
indeed.
was for me hard. Distance
Boy.
running is hard, but I like that challenge. It's like the telephone, the rotary telephone that we were talking about earlier. Like I don't know, it's a challenge. I like taking things apart and then seeing, can I figure this thing out? Can I do this run? And kind of trying to push myself a little bit. But yeah, so how many races have I done? Hard to say. On that Athlinks page, I think it said 20, but I noticed there was a bunch that were missing. Like I said, this 5K from earlier, and like when I met my wife, I was doing 5Ks like a lot, like a lot, like every few weeks. It seemed like I was just doing a race here, doing a race there. Like it was the thing to do, to go to races, meet up with friends and run, and then meet up after and talk about it. It was cool. Like that was what we did. So at least 20, but I'd say probably closer to like 30 or low 30s, something like that is probably would and it would be a lot more than that if I kept up that pace when my wife and I met. It would certainly be a lot more because, about 5 years, we've been married just at our 7-year anniversary, and we'd met 2 years prior to that. So anyway, about 5 years ago, we decided to, start a family. And since then, my running has dropped off dramatically and the pounds have increased dramatically. uh, so, but yeah, it's definitely dropped off, but I think now the kids are kind of at that age where, and there's been like some changes in life and work with my wife that are going to allow a little bit more flexibility with being able to do more runs. So hopefully that'll increase. But yeah, the past 5 years, like there's been kids take a lot of time, so there's been not a lot of time to like run and stuff, but I'm figuring it out now, so it's improving. So
Absolutely. Kids do take a lot of time, especially when they're wee little kids entering the world. Unless I won't say what I was going to say, but you guys both it's spend a lot of time with the kids, and it's critical because you have to, because they're tiny little humans.
But we could throw them in front of the TV and like hit cruise control, but we've made a conscious choice not to do that. And yeah, they're not like, they don't get no screen time, but we definitely limit it. We try to not give them a lot, right? A little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, but for the most part, we're like doing stuff.
Well,
And
who knows? Maybe at some point they'll be running races with you. I mean,
yeah,
you said you were getting back into it. You ran that one last weekend. But we'll talk about that
yeah,
most recent one in a sec. But running. You said running is hard and it's challenging, and you're not a distance runner naturally,
yeah.
and that it. I mean, I don't know the story about the guy having a couple Guinnesses and then banging out a few 7 minutes miles
That's crazy.
is astonishing. So yeah, you're apparently not that guy. And when running gets hard, how do you stay motivated? What is it inside you that keeps you going when you've got an event coming up but you don't want to run?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
even if you don't have an event coming up but you should run, what gets you out there?
Uh,
What gets your boots on the ground? Shoes on the ground?
yeah. So, like I was saying, we since we had our we started talking about having a family like 5 years ago. Laura, my wife, got pregnant. Well, but our oldest just turned 4 a couple months ago. It's been about 5 years ago. Like, she got pregnant. Life is gonna change. So like things all of a sudden, like getting the nursery ready was like a priority, and like
Mm-hmm.
doing house projects and just getting ready for this thing that I don't know, getting ready to be a dad. Like, I don't
The
know, what do you
laundry
do? Like,
room, right?
just reading books and trying to prep and figure it out. So yeah, so really, like the past 5 years, honestly, funny, been a runner for 10 years, 5 of which I've been, like family guy. So the past at least 4 years since our oldest was born has been extremely difficult to be motivated. Really difficult. What helps is yeah, having a, and Laurel, my wife says this a lot of just, you got to get a run on the calendar. Just get a run on the calendar. Sign up for something. Not in like a pesky way, but just like she knows that
If it's on the calendar,
I do better at it. Like it's the motivation, and that's like that. I think for not just running, but like anything, right? Like I
yep.
mentioned earlier about like traveling and stuff. There was times in college and even after, like especially after when we were all my friends were starting out in our careers, like we would all make a decision to like, all right, we're gonna go on this ski trip to Breckenridge or whatever, right? And oh yeah, that'd be so cool. Well, you just we kind of we'd all go, all right, we're gonna, we'd be on like a group call or something and say, all right guys, we're gonna hang up, we're all gonna book tickets, and then we'd go and like book a ticket, and then it's on the calendar, it's gonna happen, right? It's that like putting that place marker out there that certainly helps with motivation. But yeah, it's when I was running a lot, like 5 to 10 years ago, um there wasn't really much motivation, actually. It's just something I as the more I did it, the more I realized like it's a need. I have to do this for several reasons, right? Like I have pretty severe anxiety much of my adult life, and running just really is the best way that it just calms me down, right? And I used to live in a place called Ohio City, which is like right next to Cleveland, but for those that maybe aren't familiar, it's like now it's like a cool hit place. When I lived there, it was getting there, but whatever. I couldn't get home fast enough. It was like a train ride, one train stop away, and I remember like getting done with work and like I couldn't close my computer fast enough, hop on the train, get home fast enough, change out of my clothes fast enough to get out the door and just go, right? To just burn off that like anxious energy and just that feeling. Anyone who has anxiety kind of, I think, might know what I'm talking about. It's just this like, I don't, it's just this feeling. It happens to be a lot at work. I have a lot of like work based anxiety, I guess you could say. And so running just helped immensely with that. Uh, it's time for me to sort of get away, and just when you're running, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about anything. It's just
Well, runners will
one.
say it's that zone. You get
Mhm.
into the zone, and
Takes a
I
minute, but
think
once you're there, man, oh,
I
it's
think that,
awesome.
yeah, what you're talking about, that's not an uncommon thing to hear about, where people talk about whether, they're runners or just doing something, athletic that gets the blood flowing in general, something that gets them out of their mind and out of reality, or
Hmm.
rather out of reality and into their mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, is is
like
is does wonders for just wellness overall,
yeah.
period.
Could be woodworking, could be reading a book, could be whatever, right?
But I
And
think I think the physical aspect, though, just something that
yeah,
really like gets your heart moving, and maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be like distance running, but maybe it's like some high intensity interval training, or
or
like
swimming, or
whatever it is that you're capable of doing, even if it's like those walking workouts that mom and dad do, which are
mhm,
super low impact. That, like, I have friends that have like physical problems that aren't really capable of doing
mhm.
high impact stuff, and but whatever it is, like, being active in some way, shape, or form, I think is definitely good for,
Yeah,
your mind, your body, and your soul.
yeah. Just everything just sort of like goes away, and it's just putting one foot in front of the other and breathing. Like that's because for me at least, like again, I'm not like I don't run good.
So
uh,
right, it was less of a motivation, but it was just of a desire to get to that place so
get
you
to it,
could get
yeah.
away from that other place.
Like once I sort of like, because it wasn't just like I woke up and I was like, I got this thing called anxiety. Like there's this long like discovery and realization and like, wait, yeah, all right, I guess this is a thing. Whatever, man. Whether I know there's some people that really sort of like boo-hoo and like, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, I wish it was that easy for me, but it's not, and it's a real thing for me, and running really helps like
Yeah,
get
and
up like.
hopefully people that are hearing this, in some way, shape, or form, if they're going through that themselves or know someone that can,
Mhm.
clip this and send that to them, because if it's been that beneficial for you. I mean, I've kind of been in a similar situation myself. I know a lot of people, like I said, who have expressed similar things, that if you're not experiencing the results to get you out of the funk, that you're in, maybe that, there's certainly no harm that can come from trying something like this, and trying
Yeah,
a little bit of jogging or power walk or something, I
yeah,
mean, right?
anything,
Yeah.
anything. Like, and it's not maybe just the like the running and the increased heart rate or whatever. It's like sometimes it's just a change of environment, like
Yeah.
getting bogged down in like you're in your
Well,
house. It's the winter. It sucks. In Cleveland. It sucks. It's gloomy and crappy, and just strapping on your shoes and getting out. It doesn't have to be running. Again, it could be like going down to your local rec center and just taking a walk on the track, or like I don't know, and go find
yeah.
somewhere where there's no snow and just take a walk.
So
Right?
that's cool, because honestly, I was expecting like a different answer in terms of
Yeah.
motivation,
No, I don't have
but it
motivation. Like
was it was that's not, like, yeah, that sort of caught me off guard,
yeah,
which, and
motivation is hard for me. Like I said, I do not run well. It is hard for me. It is a challenge. Like the first quarter mile, I'm like, oh, like, what am I doing? Like, just turn around and go home. Like it is. It's not like I don't like it. Right? As simple as that. Like I don't like it. Um, but there was a point in time when I like was running so much that first like quarter mile still sucked. But then you sort of like you go okay, and then you sort of get in your rhythm, and then you just sort of like you zone out, and like I said, everything is just breathing and putting one foot in front of the other and going. So yeah, that's not like my motivation now is to get back to that, like to get back there where I can run to that distance and get to that point, because I'm like the old man shuffle, right? Like I
oh
run
yeah.
slower in dirt, uh and then I walk for a little bit, and I run, and then I walk, right? Like I want to get to that point
So
where you just sort of like hit cruise control, and next thing you know, you're 6 miles in, and it's like, whoa, it is awesome. Like I want to get to that's my motivation now, is I want to get back there.
so if running was never really like your thing, and you didn't really have this, this passion, like, oh, I'm gonna be a distance runner or whatever, but like you were in it because of the result, and the relief you got. Like you liked it enough to do more than 20 events. What So you've obviously had a lot of different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the best one was, and why?
Yeah. I'll answer that as soon as I answer the last question, because I keep thinking about other things that, like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool too. Like from a motivation standpoint, um, while running races, I love I love when you're running a race, and listen, I say running races, but like you don't have to if you haven't ever run one or you're interested in doing it, sign up for one and walk. Like there are probably I just did a race this past weekend and there was probably equal amounts of people walking, like full blown from the start, walking, pushing a stroller, walking a dog, whatever, and just like going down the path. And that's totally acceptable, totally normal. And I would encourage anybody to do that. Just sign up for a race and walk it, right? And there's 1 mile races. There's 5Ks, which are 3.1 miles and up, and you can usually walk those 5Ks and below. 2 mile races, I've seen those too. So while running races, I love when you're sort of running, and I put headphones in and I just sort of try to zone out, but you can't help to you can't just ignore the people that are like on the side of the street and they're cheering you along. You know, the guys that are volunteering at the water stations or whatever, and they're doing their thing and handing out water. Like it is cool. Like there's a community aspect, and you know, because you've done races. Like there's like something about being at a race that's like it's exciting. It's like game day or something. You know, it's really cool. And then I think one of my favorite parts, this is not how I'm going to answer the next question, but you said, what's your best running experience? I'd say overall, I love crossing the finish line and like, you know, you get your little medal or whatever. And then I like going back, posting up and cheering everybody else along that's finishing the race. Like that's super cool. And one of my favorite things is like, there's these, I sort of resent them because I wish I was as good as they were. I had the energy. Like the people that like cross the finish line, put on a medal, and then turn around and start running backwards, like the race course, but like the opposite direction. You've seen these guys that like they just start running and they've got their bib. But there's some that like they're cheering everybody along as they're running back. Like you got this, you can do it. Like you're almost there. Like that is cool. That encouragement of other people, you know, encouraging like encouraging others along, right?
Oh,
It's
it's wildly
you don't know
inspiring.
these
Yeah, yeah.
people. You don't know these people, but they're doing a hard thing like you just did or are about to do or are there to witness somebody do. Like it's cool and it feels good. Even if you're just in the crowd cheering people on. I've been there too. Not running. It's like I don't know, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like contagious, right? It's like there's a cool feeling there. So anyway, you asked.
Real quick, just to like piggyback what you just said, I do think that that's something worth taking into consideration for someone who wants to mix up their social scene and maybe do so in a way that's also family friendly,
Mhm, mhm.
and do so in a way that could provide, physical benefit, in all permaculture talk, all these stacked functions. Somebody that's got limited time that wants to do all of this stuff, what you're suggesting and recommending is a great idea, because you can do all of that, and and more.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's really it's cool. It's really but so let you we'll go back to the question. I'll try not to get my mind's I'm getting off track. But to get back, kind of try to get it back on track. You asked about what my best running experience was. Excuse me. And I think I think I'd have to say that it was my very first. So never distance runner. Started off, did a like a 5 miler, maybe a 5K, and then a 5 miler, which is long, for somebody who's not a distance runner, like has never been, and they're in their approaching mid 30s. And so I did my first. I worked my way up. I think I was I can't remember how, but somebody had a crazy idea of like, hey, you should do a half marathon, and I thought, what? You're crazy. Not doing that. But I ended up getting roped into it somehow, and yeah, so I did it. I signed up for a half marathon, and I was not ready for it. I did not train well for it. I think leading up to that, the most I'd ran was like maybe a half of that, like 6 or 7 miles was my longest long run. But it came, and I was like, well, shoot, uh, I gotta. I paid good money for this. I guess I'll like. We'll see what happens. Like
Yeah,
I've
let's do
only
this.
done 6 or 7 miles. Like, can I go the distance? Like and this is what I was starting to talk with people at work with a lot of other runners, and they're like, listen, your first half marathon, your goal shouldn't be a particular time or anything. It should be to cross the finish line, whether you're walk half of it or whatever, just crossing that finish line with your own 2 feet going 13.1 miles. That should be your goal. And I did, and I remembered that. But my first half marathon was October of 2013, and it was the Cleveland Rock and Roll Half Marathon or whatever I think it was called that. And this was I think my best running experience because you, mom, dad, Kate, you all you guys came out to cheer me on to cheer me on. Like, holy crap, our son and brother's doing a half marathon. Wow. And I remember you guys, or maybe it was mom, probably made these. I was like, how am I going to find you guys? I don't know. Like, this is sort of like before you find my friends or whatever. Like, there were some apps and some phone things that you could do, but it wasn't really like readily available at the time, I don't think. So what we ended up doing, I think mom made these, like, got a bunch of dowel rods and like stapled some like yellow fabric on the end. Uh, and I still have them. Like, they're in our storage room. Like, I can't get rid of them because it's one of those things I'll probably drag along. I'm constantly trying to like get rid of stuff, and like stuff that is unnecessary, as I'm looking at my extremely like busy background, and I don't need half of this stuff. But that's one of those things that I'll always probably keep with me because it was such a good memory because you know not only was my family there, but I'm sure you're the regular viewers, listeners will know that you had a really bad health experience back in October of 2013, like 2 or 3 weeks before this race, and it was scary as hell from like a family member standpoint. Um, right? Should I not be talking about this? I don't
No,
know.
that's fine. I've
Okay,
talked about it.
yeah. So yeah, it was you were out west, not next door, not a quick drive down the street or even a couple hour drive. You were out there, and yeah, this thing happened, and yeah, we were scared. We were really scared. Like, we didn't. It was scary. I'll leave it at that. I won't go into detail, but like, we're really freaked out, and you're probably wondering, what the hell does this have to do with running and your best running experience? But having my family there to kind of support me, and this was only a few weeks after your big health scare happened, and I remember the point where you guys were on the course, at least for the first time. I think you sort of met up a couple other times and to cheer me on, but it was this big uphill, like just a long, like, doesn't end uphill, and yeah, I see the yellow flags. I was like, there they are, and I just had this like motivation. I'm like, here I am running up a hill. This is great. And then you and Kate like came over and ran with me for like to the top of the hill or something. Or I think Kate peeled off, and then you kept running. I can't remember, but that was really cool for so many reasons. One, you were there. That was awesome because of all this shit that just happened. Like, just being there, period. That was cool. And then, just getting that like family support was probably my best running experience, and probably one of the ones that kept me going, and to finish that race and then to do more races after that. Like, it was cool. That was a really cool experience. So
Uh, I remember that, and it was cool on my end as well, as not necessarily a participant, but an attendee.
Yeah.
being the supporter. So if that was your best experience, well, how about how about the worst one? How about the
Well,
worst one? What was like the very worst thing, or maybe not even a worst event, but worst running experience?
well, it was probably about 6 to 7 minutes after that experience because got to the top of the hill
All
and I was
right.
like, shoot, I should have. I don't know what happened. Like I know exactly what happened. Is I only trained in my shoes, like I said, up until like 6 or 7 miles, and I was at that point in this race, and I still had 6 or 7 more miles to go. And I was like at the halfway point, and I'm going, oof, my feet aren't feeling so hot. Like, first off, they weren't even
Uh-oh.
running shoes; they were like I don't even know what they were called. They weren't running shoes, that's for sure. And I just started getting my feet were rubbing, and I
Uh-oh.
got blisters like crazy. So
6 miles in, 7 miles in, huh?
yeah,
Oh
and
boy.
it was the rest of the way I was run walk run walk run walk and just in pain. So um but yeah, so I pushed through. Yeah, it was painful, but it was short lived, and I recovered and kept running after that. So I think it's kind of important that sometimes something I think there's a lot of like lessons there, right? Like you can have something that's so good and so bad, kind of like right next to each other in the same event or the same day of your life or whatever. Uh, and yeah, so I think that was overall like I haven't had many bad running experiences, but that was, aside from like the, running at night or early in the morning and, hitting a bump in the sidewalk and falling. Like aside from that, there haven't been that many bad ones, but that blister one,
That's
that
well,
was rough.
that's good. If you don't really have too many, if you have way more memorable stories and positive experiences than memorable negative ones, then I would
Well,
chalk that up to a
listen,
good career of running. What were you
there,
gonna
there,
say?
there might be a lot of bad ones, but I think like most things, you tend to maybe remember the good ones, and the bad experiences just sort of fade away. I'm now remembering like a lot of
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of like things with running that suck, right? Like it's not you hurt, you're sore, like always if you're running regularly and stuff like that, and you chafe like all over your body and weird, like it's not
But
great,
but
but it's
I think go ahead, finish
I was
that
just gonna
thought,
say it's
please.
worth it. Like it's worth it.
Y-
The running is the outcome and the feeling you get, or the feeling that I get, is worth those like little small inconveniences.
Yeah, because in the grand scheme of things, like you just said, in a way, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, you overlook those negative experience because the positive far outweighs everything. But that only happens, when you do that positive thing
Yeah.
consistently for a period of time. And only then can you look back and realize, like, oh, damn, this has been a real good thing for me. Like, yeah, there's been plenty of like sucks, but like
Mhm.
embrace the suck and whatever and all that, motivational stuff. I mean, that's real, and that's kind of what it's all about. So, um, yeah, getting through
Yeah.
those bad experiences to be able to reflect on it, like now, and look back, sort of in this 10-year picture of your distance running history, I think is a testament to consistency and sticking with things for the long game. So, um, you just completed that run last weekend. The what was it? The reindeer run?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I didn't realize this, but right there's my bib and my little medal. I didn't like that wasn't planned or anything, but I came down here. I have a bag that has all my medals and like race bibs, so I wanted to put it in there. And yeah, so there it is. That was just this 2 days ago, Sunday morning,
Yeah. So what's the
or 3 days
next
ago,
what so what's the
whatever day
next
it is.
whatever day it is. Tuesday, Wednesday,
I
Thursday.
don't know.
So with that race just last weekend, what's the next scheduled race? What's up next on the agenda?
Yeah, well, so the gosh, it's I don't know. I don't have one like specifically planned, right? Of the next one. Uh, I don't know if there's like a big reveal here, but you know, I think that like I wanted to. I just wanted this past weekend was just a one of those things where I needed to get a run on the calendar and just have a goal of getting to to do that race, and got there, and I think we were hanging out on like Saturday night working on some stuff at the farm, and just got to like geeking out, right? And we said, I think we're gonna do this big race coming up in the springtime. So that's the only one I think that like I have like committed to, right? I have now an
Yeah.
accountability partner for that. So, but yeah, there's a 5K here coming up in oh couple weeks that I think I might do. It's local. It's like in my neighborhood, so I might do that. It's a 5K, and then I'll probably just start knocking out 5Ks every month, like for races starting in January, February, and then things change a little bit. So
Yeah, we okay. So we definitely did talk about that, the marathon, and then I went I went hardcore and tried to convince you and everyone that would listen to me that we should all run marathons.
yeah,
And the reality is this is in 24 weeks,
yeah,
and in an adjustment to the training schedule that I had previously used, I decided that it would be in my best interest to go out and bang out a 5 mile run Sunday.
how'd that go?
And this didn't go well.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think I'm basically no different now than I was many years ago. And
you're starting fresh, like you're starting as if
mhm,
you've never run a day before in your life. Yeah,
I think anyone that's engaged in, if you've been like, well, even in your case, you talked about like skiing. Like when was the last time you went skiing? Like maybe this is not the best
March,
example. Okay,
March.
never.
Yeah,
This is a terrible example then.
skiing's weird because I can
Like
just like pick it up. It's weird.
yeah. Um. So, but maybe like say cycling. Like
Mhm.
maybe you did
Or swimming
some
or something.
yeah
Yeah,
some long distance endurance event in the past. It's yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and I faced that Sunday in a number of different ways that we can talk about later. But yeah, I think that doing a half marathon would be a wise starting point, and
yeah,
then maybe do a marathon later in the year if I feel so inclined. But
yeah. Listen,
yeah,
if it works
well, go
out
ahead.
and it works, like, hey, you're halfway there, then continue training and hit a marathon in the fall or something. But
Yeah,
for me, like there's I mentioned did this 5K, so it's now like I have to keep going. And it's good having an accountability partner because I don't know, I don't
hopefully we could do some long runs together. Like
yeah.
that would
Well,
be
that's the
really
whole
cool,
thing. That's the whole thing is when you're like, yeah,
because the
let's do
long
long
runs are the
runs when
ones
you're
that
geeking
suck.
out. Yeah, those suck bad. Like the runs during the week, for those who don't know, you do, I don't know, between 2 and 3 like uh there's all kinds of different approaches. I just would throw miles on there, right? Like just kind of knock some of these miles out. Some people will say, Tuesday is my pace day where you run at the pace you want to run your marathon in, and then like Thursday is um
Interval day.
interval day, right, where you like knock out a really fast mile and then a really slow one and then a really fast one or whatever. I just do miles. Like I've never really
That's how
been
I
into that.
run. I
So
like to run to finish, and
yeah,
anyway.
just um but so my whole aside from when I first started running out, like maybe the first year that I ran, I aside from that, like I've run every single year, every single race is just me. Like me running, me training, me like just off on my
Even the
own.
half.
Yeah. I think I maybe did a couple of long runs with some people,
Okay.
but like I could count on one hand the number of long runs I've done with people. Like I've always done it solo. So that is kind of I enjoy it, but I also don't enjoy it. Like having that accountability, like that's the hard. We talked about motivation earlier. Like that's hard. And when you have somebody, and this I think kind of is applicable not just to running, but like if you have an accountability partner that can sort of like keep you in check and you keep them in check, and like whether it's any kind of goal that you want to do, or just kind of check in and that kind of stuff, that is
100%.
extremely helpful and useful. So when you were, kind of geeking out, like, yeah, dude, let's do this. We'll do long runs. And I was like, yeah, I was getting excited. Where am I going with this? I think the cool part, yeah, is we're talking about like next races on the calendar.
Yeah.
Like doing I'm going to do a 5K in I think in a week or two. And then in January, in February, I don't think there's many races in January. I think I've looked in years past. There's like
Probably
nothing.
not so much here in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah. February, believe it or not, I know there are a couple, and then like
there's also on the whole race.
Yeah.
There is a 5K fun run and polar bear plunge. Just got the email today. I was going to send it to you. We should do that one.
All right,
for training.
I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in.
Yes.
But there's really like it's really kind of cool, at least in Cleveland. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but there's like a series of races that are like a perfect ramp up to the half marathon in March. I looked them up today. March 11th there's a 5 miler, and then March 25th, so just a couple weeks after that, there's a half marathon, so 6.55 miles. And then about a month later in April, at the end of April, there's a 10 miler. And then a month later at the end of May, there's the half marathon. So you've got like a 5 mile, a 5.6 mile, a 10 mile, and then a 13.1 mile. So
I might bandit some of those with you.
What?
Run bandit.
We'll
talk later.
Sorry.
But like you said, the two longer runs I did, I had accountability partners, and that was a big deal. That was a huge deal, because if you don't do the things you're supposed to do, your accountability partner is going to, hold you accountable. And
yeah,
that's the whole point. And like you said, with goals, with anything, not just physical. And I think, when we were also talking, and maybe after the fact, I got to thinking that, anyone that is watching or listening, if they're not already in the All Around Growth Facebook group, they could join the group, and then we'll create an event for this, and, maybe have a whole little accountability group of anybody that is either local to Northeast Ohio that wants to run the race with us, or if they're not local to Northeast Ohio, then they can jump on board with the training and just, run to get in shape,
or walk to get in shape, whatever.
Yeah, or do whatever to get in shape, but just follow along and hang out with a bunch of other people who are getting in shape with a deadline and a time frame. And that's just a good way to, do good things and stay on point. So
yep. And if you are considering or wanting to do that, and you're just I don't know, I'm overweight, or I'm a whatever, I can't move well, like whatever it is, setting any goal to just move is worth it. And there's a quote that I've read somewhere, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of it doesn't matter how fast you run. I'm a slow runner. Like my miles are not fast. But it says it doesn't matter how slow you run. You're lapping everybody who's sitting on the couch, which is kind of cool. Like, and not that it's like you're lapping yourself if you were sitting on the couch. You can look at it that way. That's kind of how I look at it. Not like I'm not very competitive. I'm at all with this kind of stuff. But what's the other thing you'd be doing? Like it's. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's good to get up and get out and get going and move.
For sure. And you said, like, if you think you can't do this, if you're overweight or whatever, I remember, I've lost
Yeah.
Like I've
Yeah.
lost over 100 pounds, and I didn't just lose 100 pounds because I decided to like, run become a distance runner. But like, I remember way back when, you mentioned how you struggled with your first mile. Dude, I remember getting all geared up I like, with my Camelback and my this and my that, and the net total like mileage that I did a half a mile, and I was totally,
Yeah.
totally gassed. I wasn't even at altitude or anything stupid, but like you got like in the beginning, everyone sucks.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
we all start somewhere. And like your somewhere is way better than someone else's somewhere. And it's also
way
nowhere
worse. Yeah.
close to someone else's somewhere. And you
Yeah.
can't like compare yourself to anybody else. You just got to like understand that what you want is what you want, and you got to do what you want. You got to do what you need to do to get that thing that you want and desire. And it's hard, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you do. I remember vividly. This is actually, I was still this is before I was running regularly, right? With friends. I thought, it's a good idea. I'm gonna go out and run. I don't know, people do that, right? So I just thought I'm gonna go run. I put on my shoes. Again, growing up as a sprinter. So I went out, I'm like, this feels right. This is like a good pace. It could not have been more than about, no exaggeration, like 400 yards. Like that's not even a quarter mile, if that, like maybe 200 yards. And I was like, holy crap. And I had an app, and I was like, I'm gonna record this. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna show my friends how I went running. And I remember doing that. Like I recorded myself, and I was like, holy crap. Like dying, absolutely dying. I go, well, how do people do this? Then I realized there's this thing called pacing. Anyway.
Yeah, this isn't like, also it's not, this isn't just like me and you being like two rah motivational dudes saying like, you can do this.
Not
like,
even close.
No, it's like, this is real stuff from like real dudes who aren't runners, but like, just, I'm hoping that it's an indicator that, or like some sort of thing that leads someone to think like, you know what, maybe I can do a thing that I thought I never could.
Yeah. So two things. Like I remember first off, like running. This is my first run. Went out, did the thing, came back, like hit stop, and I'm like, I'm gonna post this to social media. And I posted it. I remember specifically this one dude who I like went to high school with or whatever that I wasn't really friends with, but an acquaintance. And his first response, like almost immediately, like, dude, were you crawling? I was like, I guess that didn't go well. Like it was so slow. So yeah, you got it, but you start somewhere, and there's several quotes. I won't like totally get lame with that, but like, there's one that's that I think is totally applicable here. Like you, Rob, I remember when you did your marathon, right? You ran a marathon. That's insane for you. Like you were the guy in high school that played football and was a lineman and a big dude, like, or in grade school, whatever. Like you were always like you were not a runner is what I'm trying to say,
No.
The furthest thing from it, you ran a marathon like that. There's a lot of in between there. And you have to start somewhere. But a quote is, those that think they can and those that think they cannot are both usually right. So it's you might not think you can do it, but you go out there and you do it, right? And you go, all right, well, I'm gonna do it again. I think I can do it. And like there's this little like, I think I might be able to do that. Like what my first run where I said, I think I might be able to go run. I failed miserably, right? Because I went out too fast. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But then I started reading more and researching and figuring it out and learning different tactics and like how to breathe when you're running. And like all of a sudden little things started getting easier and easier. And then I realized, when you go out and eat a bunch of pizza the night before and then go running the next morning, you're sluggish and, you can't do it well and you're just huffing and puffing. Whereas if you eat healthy and sensible and like certain things help affect your running. So I'm kind of going all over the place here, but
no, but
you got to
go ahead
somewhere, and you can do it. Like you can, whether it's running or anything, just set your mind to it and go.
And I agreed 100%. And yes, you can. And I believe that, all right, like we already talked about, and I don't want to like beat a dead horse on this, but you don't have to go out and run a marathon or a half marathon or run, period.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that, physical activity, and lately, because of some injuries and stuff that I had with my shoulder, like the extent of my physical, yeah, all right, I probably could have been running and doing some cardio, but I didn't. The extent of my actual physical activity was limited to like stretching and mobility
Yeah.
routines on the ground, and but it's still good to do that because that helps you gain some balance that you may not be able to achieve without that. Like, and in this show, we talk about kind of balance in life and purpose in life and financial, physical, and all personal development, all of that. And so, whether it's distance running or whatever, I think everything that you talked about with regard to, you know, like the goals, the approach to doing that, especially with regard to like the upcoming marathon, the step ups to that, having accountability partners, getting things on the calendar. That brings up one real quick other side note. Like, I used to do a past year review. I might revisit it this year. It's something that Tim Ferriss wrote about in a blog post in 2017 or 2018. And he mentions that very thing, that once things are on the calendar,
Mm-hmm.
there's something about the act of putting it on the calendar that makes it an actionable item that you then begin to act on.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, that's, you know, nail on the head right there. So, it's important to do these things no matter what the goals
Yeah.
are.
And
And
dude, and even like I put this race this past weekend, I put it on the calendar and I was like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna do this because I want to get up to being able to run. Because right now, I'll tell you, right now I'm at a point where I went out during that race and ran. I think I hit 1.25 miles, and I went, oof, duh, I got to start walking a little bit.
yep,
I took a little bit of a break and then picked it up and did maybe another half mile and then a little bit of a walk. And then I think I made it, I was pretty solid to 2 miles. And then the last mile was just run, walk, run, walk, run, walk. Like I'd go, I get to that point where it's like, all right, 2 fire hydrants, run to the 2 fire hydrants. All right, then I'll walk to the next fire hydrant. Then I'll run 2 more fire hydrants and then I'll walk, right? Like even just like this
hey,
big goal of running a 5K then turned into, okay, well, just go as far as you can. And that was like 1.25 miles. And then it's all right, well, I'll go as far as I can again. And then I keep trying to just do that. And then it comes down to like, let me get to 2 driveways or like 2 telephone poles, whatever it is. Just let me just setting these big goals, small goals, but you're just, as long as you're moving forward and moving towards something, is I think that's the important part. Yeah.
absolutely, so absolutely, just keep moving forward, and
Yeah.
and don't stop. So, um, I don't know. That's about that's about it. I want to say thanks for coming on to talk about everything with regard to distance running. I like how it ultimately started off as distance running, but sort of morphed into
Yeah.
goals because, um, mm, I think that's a lot how we're wired. Similar. I mean, we're brothers. We think very similarly, yet we're very different people. That's how siblings are.
Mm-hmm.
Kate operates in a very similar ways as well. But it's cool how the dialogue morphed from strictly running and the history on that to everything else with regard to goals. And one other thing, when we were talking about tinkering and building and projects and all of this in the past, I've done and I'm like very behind on this in terms of getting it up to date, but I started doing a small series on how to build a commercial kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the framing part, yada yada yada. Uh, and then I stopped. But we recently, this past weekend, as far as tinkering and taking things apart. We were taking apart computers and, talking about developing the internet and the infrastructure here and the future infrastructure and the building and development of the network and things like that. Would you be interested in coming on again at some point to talk about basically how one could set up a home network and offsite files data storage system?
Yeah, I could. It's sort of a work in progress. I'm, kind of like everything, building a commercial kitchen and like framing that thing out. I don't know about that until I did,
Yeah.
research. And like we mentioned at the very top of this, like I have this weird desire to like figure out how things work and how to do it like the right way and why and on all of that. So it's like,
Well,
yeah,
so
learn how to
little of this
frame.
would actually be would be done if it wasn't for you. The room that I'm sitting in right here
Yeah.
was sketched out by you. The kitchen was so
Yeah.
much of everything was done because of your tinkering, not
Yeah.
just abilities, but your desire to dive in and not just do it, but to do it well.
Yeah. Like there's, yeah, there's another quote. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. Like I like that. That's one that I like. If you're gonna put forth the effort, you may as well like do it the right way and do it well. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I don't have it all figured out. I'm working through it. You mentioned the tinkering and the taking apart of the computer. I mean, it's right over here, right next to me. The guts of what isn't going to be used is right there on the floor. Like, yeah. So there's a server build happening, and we're working on the network at the farm and all of that. So yeah, I'd be happy to come on and talk about what I know and what I don't know, challenges, like how I go about figuring stuff out, and yeah, all that good
Cool,
stuff.
because there's
Love to.
I think that would be, first of all, it would be cool for like just fodder for conversation, good podcast content. But
Yeah,
I'd also like to share it with some of these, techie, you know, groups that I'm in, and maybe see if anyone's actually interested in listening to it, getting feedback
feedback.
on what we're doing, and
Maybe they have a better
just
idea. I don't
just
know.
yeah, doing, who knows? I mean, there's all sorts of people that I hang out in these groups just to learn stuff. I feel like I'm the dorky troll that doesn't
Oh man.
contribute much except lame jokes and things like that. But I have learned a lot and gotten some good feedback, and we talked about some of that this weekend, and I think that
Yeah.
would make a cool show. So if you're into it, I'm into it. But for now, why don't we call it until next time? How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All
Happy
right.
to be here, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Matt. And I look forward to talking to you next time. We'll see you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Bye bye.
See ya.
Okay. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you to my brother who was, gracious enough to come on the show and, you know, not only, come on the show and help me get used to the idea of doing podcasts and doing them a little bit better and doing them a little bit more frequently, but talking about distance running, something that, much like my brother, I mean, he's far more experienced in it than I am. I've done some. Um, by no means would I consider myself a runner like he did, but I have a lot of respect for my brother for the things that he's done in his life, the way that he lives his life, the integrity that he has, the approach that he has towards life, and all of that was reflected in the conversation that we had, which was about running, but morphed into goals and how to make progress with your goals in terms of accountability. So, for those listening who aren't already members of the All Around Growth group on Facebook and Telegram, what we're going to do is we're going to create an event or some sort of subgroup. I don't know how this works. Maybe some of those that are out there in the group that are more savvy in these things, Rachel, I'm talking to you, can help me with this. But yeah, we're going to create an event that will serve as some sort of accountability platform where people can share their training routines. I'll upload the spreadsheet that I've made, the spreadsheet that I'm going to modify after Sunday's experience with my own distance run. And it will just be a good take on something that's already in place with a little bit more specificity to physical goals. And like I said, that's a big part of what we talk about in the show. Goals in 7 areas of life: financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And tomorrow, with regard to topics on those shows, we're going to talk about something um, in the realm of personal development. We're going to talk about goals again, but not in the way that we normally do. We're going to talk about goals for the podcast. And that's going to be an interesting show. Very much look forward to diving into that and doing the prep work on that to share my thoughts with you. And then Friday, we're going to go ahead and mix it up a little bit with a live stream. A live stream where we're going to look at what's trending on Twitter. Yeah. Twitter. I thought I had some notes on Twitter, but I do not. The bottom line is I used to do these shows on Tuesday, little trending Twitter topic Tuesdays or whatever we called them. And they were fun to talk about. And they were kind of back in the OG days on the road. And since leaving my day job in May and having a little bit more structure to the show, I haven't really done an episode like that. But I feel like for a live stream on Friday, that would be a good way to talk about whatever is trending in the world of news, entertainment, politics, sports, music. I don't know, things that people pay attention to and care about. I'm going to talk about those things. And it's probably going to be interesting because I'm probably going to provide my opinions and insight on some of these matters, which, quite frankly, I think are oftentimes, well, I'll hold those opinions for Friday's live stream. And then next week, when we'll get into a few things where we'll get into a weekend recap, and hopefully when we dive back into the rotating topics on Tuesday with a family topic, we'll talk about this internet infrastructure and all the other various homestead projects going on that I just, sort of hashed out with my brother. So hopefully we can have another discussion, talk about that and more, because on Monday during the recap, we will be talking about, while we're not having any markets this weekend, I will be meeting with Dad on Friday to talk about a number of things. And I'll be talking about that stuff with my brother and my mom, and undoubtedly some of what will transpire in that discussion will result in some of the homestead projects, which recently included the internet infrastructure improvements. So stay tuned for all of that over the next couple days and next week. And finally, last but not least, I would like to take a moment to mention the sponsors who made all of this possible. Whew. We've got Food Forest Farms over there at foodforestfarms.com. The home of air roasted specialty coffee, a fun hip camp, and a cozy Airbnb. The show is being brought to you now in video format, just like this, because they are providing us the opportunity to stream and record the show in video. So many thanks to Food Forest Farms. Go check them out, foodforestfarms.com. And also, the show is sponsored by York Meadow Farm, who produces handcrafted batches of probiotic rich fermented foods and natural bath and body products scented with pure essential oils. And if you are still listening to this show at this point, you can get a 25% discount at checkout by entering the code all around growth at checkout. So please consider purchasing products that you likely already use or consume, or maybe products that you ought to. Check out York Meadow Farm, and you can support the show by buying products from them. It's a win-win-win. And that is all we have for this episode today. I very much appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.